Up to the 30, the 20, 10, 5. Torrey Horton back to the end zone.
48-yard play. Guess who? Body up the middle, making another move to the outside. 15, 10, end zone again.
Keeps it. Nice move by Brown. He's got space. He's got 6. 35-yard touchdown for Byron Brown. A record-setting night for the South Florida quarterback.
Down so far, a little bit of a high snap. Genty right up the middle. Genty has room. Ashton Genty, give him 6.
Second and long. Lagar tries to fit it in. Rose, it does. Rose stays up. The Suns offense 4-3 wheels. Incredible effort for Rose.
The G5 Hive. All G5, all the time.
Welcome to the G5 Hive Live. We are excited to bring you the G5 college football coverage you love each and every week. I am Luke. Always get my fingers mixed up. I am joined by my co-host, Justice. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're like Eric Froton, who got here early, actually right on time, we just started a little bit late, thanks to me. Make sure you go out and you comment. We'll try to get to everybody's comments as the show goes on. If you have something, please ask. We'll get it out there. And if you're watching us on X, please give us a follow, a like, a retweet. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review. Justin and I have some big news. We talked about it a little bit last week, but it is a pinned tweet on our X. Justice, do you want to talk a little bit about this before we kind of get into the nuts and bolts?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, our merch store is now available live. I will put the link in the comments. I literally just got the word probably 5 minutes ago from the provider that it's available. So yeah, if you want to support us, the best ways to support the work that we do here is number one, go to YouTube, hit that subscribe button, and number two, visit the merch store, get yourself some sweet gear. We got shirts, long sleeve, short sleeve, performance shirts, fleeces, hoodies, all the above. So yeah, visit the merch store. The link is in the video comments on YouTube. It's also pinned to our Twitter page, X page, whatever you want to call it. It's a twin. It's pinned to the top there, so you can find the link there. So yeah, super excited about that. We don't have hats yet. The hats that Luke and I ordered were kind of a one-off kind of thing. If there's a demand for hats, I can talk to the hat guy. The hat guy is a different provider than the shirt guy.
You gotta have a hat guy, you gotta have a shirt guy, and as Chris Carter always mentioned, gotta have a fall guy. Gotta have those three.
Absolutely. But yeah,
well, Justice,
big news, man.
And I don't know, maybe bigger news. Not sure where you stand on it, but ODU. It's been a while since there's been a home game. You're a season ticket holder. You gotta go to the game, and you're rewarded with a win.
Yeah, it's been a month since a home game. I have media rights to Old Dominion football, so I get to go to the press conference. I haven't used it to go on the field yet because, I don't have a super nice camera, and I don't want to sit there and look like I'm taking pictures with my cell phone and all these folks out there taking pictures with their nice cameras. So I just kind of sit in my season tickets, and then I go to the post-game press conference, man. But what a game. I don't know if folks watched that game, but, I mean, the defense played phenomenal. They held Texas State scoreless in the first half. It's 14-0 at halftime. They just they played really well. They got after Jordan McLeod, kind of held the receivers down. The one guy, man. So we interviewed Ismail Mahdi back, I don't know, January, February timeframe. I got to see him in person, and my God, he's good. He's good. He ran, I think, for 145 yards. He was getting it seemed like 6 to 10 yards a carry. And almost every time we were stopping him with like a shoestring tackle. And I told my friend, like, in the first quarter, I was like, man, that's not going to continue, right? He's going to break one of these, because like, how often can you just keep shoestring tackling the guy? Well, they kept doing it throughout the game. I don't think it's a great recipe for success in the future, but it worked on Saturday. But yeah, Ismati was, man, he was impressive to see in person. But yeah, Old Dominion got the win, and then pretty special, because it brings up a huge game Thursday night. The game is on national TV, ESPN2 versus Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern is undefeated in Sun Belt play, number 1 in the Sun Belt East. Old Dominion is in second in the Sun Belt East with a couple other teams. So if Old Dominion can get that win, they'll be tied for first. And they'll have the tiebreaker over Georgia Southern. It's Military Appreciation Week. The coaches show tonight was done in a submarine, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, which is pretty cool, right? And then this past week, they unveiled some pretty sweet new uniforms for homecoming. They were Hudson Blue, as ODU calls it, with the old retro racetrack logo, a white helmet with the Hudson Blue ODU racetrack logo and Hudson Blue stripes. I don't know, just a cool week, man, and a huge game Thursday night coming up. So yeah, it's a good time to be an Old Dominion fan. Hopefully, we can knock off the Eagles on Thursday night. If you didn't watch that game, there was a point in the game where ODU was up by 3, and I think there was like a minute 59 left, and it was 4th and 2. ODU had the ball on their own, I don't know, 30-yard line or so. And the decision was kick the field goal, go up 6, or go for it. They took a timeout. I told my dad, I said, Ricky Ronnie's going to kick the field goal. He's just so conservative. That's what he's going to do. He didn't. They went for it. They got it. Colton Joseph got another touchdown to put them up by even more. But in the post-game press conference, someone asked Ricky about that call. And he said, to my own detriment, and my agent's not going to like this, but I want to be honest with you guys, I was going to kick the field goal. And I just kind of started laughing to myself a little bit, because I was like, yeah, I know you were. And he talked through that, talked it through. Some of these folks were definitely in his ear, I would assume. He didn't say who, but he kind of said, well, that only puts us up 6. Touchdown still beats us. I figured, Kenny's gonna, go for the touchdown. And so when even if we were only up 3, he's not gonna kick that field goal. He goes, I wanted to be up more than 3. And so that's ultimately why they went for it. It wasn't, but I guess the funny thing for me was I wasn't shocking to hear him say I was going to kick the field goal, but ultimately other folks were able to get to him, and they were, in my opinion, they were right. What's the difference between 3 and 6? Not a whole lot. And Colton Joseph got a touchdown. They win by 10. So that's like the first time they've won by more than one score in a really, really long time. But yeah, it was a great game. I really enjoyed it. Excited for Thursday.
All right. Well, you also got to ask your first question in the post conference, or the post game press conference.
I did. So for the first time this year, there were different players. So every other home game, the 2 players that they brought in after Coach Ronnie were Aaron Young, running back, and Koa Nawataloa, linebacker. So that's the only players we had seen in the post-game press conference. This time they had Colton Joseph, the redshirt freshman quarterback. They had Jerron Manning, the safety, and Marcus Knight, linebacker. And Jerron, I've been a big fan of Jerron Manning. He's one of the best safeties in college football, if much less just a G5. We do our 2020 players each week. Jerron Manning is the number 1 safety on that. And he's not just the number 1 safety in the G5 in adjusted net yards. He's the number 1 safety in all of college football. He tackles, he covers, he does it all. I just hope that Old Dominion can hold on to Jerron Manning. He seems to really love it here. and hopefully that will go a long way at the end of the year, because there's no doubt in my mind that some big schools with some big money are going to come calling for Jerron Manning. But nonetheless, yeah, so Jerron Manning was one of the players, and I asked him a question just about his mentality in coverage. Folks always talk about how well he tackles. He led the team in tackles, 14 tackles. He's great in run support, but folks don't understand how great he is in coverage as well. So I asked him, a question about his mentality and coverage, and basically said, it's a me versus them thing, and I'm going to win. I want to be the winner, and so it's just that's kind of what it is. But yeah, that was the first question I asked in the press conference. So that was cool, and it was to Jerron Manning, and hopefully, hopefully one day in the near future, we'll have Jerron on for an interview. But yeah, good stuff.
All right.
Yes, Billy. Thursday night, ESPN2, 7 p.m. The game's at Old Dominion. Like I said, Military Appreciation Week. They're doing this whole drone show at halftime. No idea if the drone show is going to be on television or not, but just great stuff.
All right. Well, let's get into the G5 Hive Players of the Week for Week 8. Freshman Offensive Player of the Week is wide receiver TJ Pratt at New Mexico State. TJ caught 4 balls for 59 yards and a touchdown to lead the Aggies in a double overtime 33-30 victory over Louisiana Tech. In high school, TJ competed in track and field in addition to football. As a senior at DeSoto High School, he caught 54 passes for 988 yards and 13 touchdowns in the Texas 6A D2 State Championship, when TJ caught 8 balls for 112 yards and 1 touchdown. Congratulations, TJ.
Our freshman defensive player of the week is linebacker Chris Jones from Southern Mississippi. Chris had 9 tackles, 6 solos, half a tackle for a loss to lead the Golden Eagles defense in Week 8. Chris was a 3-star athlete and top 65 player in Mississippi by 24/7 when he was coming out of high school. He played for Hartfield Academy and led them to their first undefeated season in a Class 6A state championship. He was also named the Class 6A Defensive Player of the Year and to the Army All-American Bowl. As a senior, he tallied 112 tackles, 20 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, 4 interceptions, 4 quarterback hurries, and 7 touchdowns. Congratulations, Chris Jones, on being the G5 Hive Freshman Defensive Player of the Week.
All right. And getting into my Offensive Player of the Week, I had a couple different options I was leaning, but ultimately I go friend of the program, Mario Anderson out of Memphis. He played a huge role in the Tigers' 52-44 win over North Texas. He had 22 carries for 183 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns. He had 5 receptions for 27 yards. With how Army and Navy are playing, this was a big win to stay in the hunt for the conference championship appearance. And ultimately, that's why I picked him in this one. It was this back and forth, and they needed all 4 touchdowns that he was able to provide. North Texas, it was a good back and forth game. A little defense played. But yeah, all 4 touchdowns were huge. And it's like, if they would have lost that game and get 2 losses, then
they're probably
I don't know. I don't know how you're making that up here as we're getting late into the season. So that's ultimately why I picked Mario Anderson. Other people had great games, but he had a great game, and it was important.
For my Offensive Player of the Week, I went with running back A.J. Turner from the Marshall Thundering Herd. A.J. has been electrifying all season on limited touches, and he's definitely the best running back for the Thundering Herd. In Week 8, A.J. had 15 carries for 177 yards rushing. That's 11.8 yards per carry. He had 3 rushing touchdowns, and he added 1 catch for 30 yards and another touchdown through the air to lead the Thundering Herd to victory over Georgia State in Week 8. Congratulations, AJ. For my Defensive Player of the Week, I went back to New Mexico State with defensive end Cale Edwards. Cale is a senior defensive end for the New Mexico State Aggies, had 7 tackles, 5 solos, and 4 sacks in the Week 8 win over Louisiana Tech. The Aggies won in double overtime, 33-30. Congratulations, Cale.
All right, in my Defensive Player of the Week, I took linebacker Malachi Langley out of Fresno State. Langley had 13 tackles, 7 of which were solos. He had 2 sacks in their 24-21 1 win over Nevada. Now, Justice, let's get into what the Swarm needs to know. What are the news and notes from Week 8 around the G5?
All right, a lot of things happening, especially in like the last, 2 days. But
Yeah.
last week, Hawaii announced they're joining the Mountain West as an all sports member in 2026. Previously, they were football only. I believe they were in the Big Sky, I want to say, or Big West for other sports. But they're going to join the Mountain West full time. It gives the Mountain West the 8 full time members that are required. And then, so now the Mountain West is kind of turning their sights into a football only school. And reportedly, they're targeting Northern Illinois and Toledo to join as football only. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Because what would they do with their other sports? Just seeing how conference things work in the past, when you tell them you're leaving football, I think they generally would say, "Hey, well, you're not welcome here in the other sports either." And so I would think if they're going to,
especially like with like the MAC bringing in teams here, like they wouldn't. I would think that they wouldn't want to lose teams because you just brought on I don't know, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and so I don't know how enticing a football only invite is for a MAC school. I would think they would, for them it would have to be all sports, and I just don't know. Like, do they want the additional travel? I don't know. Just kind of interesting dynamics. I agree with you, Billy. Leave the MAC alone. I think they're adding UMass next year. I think they're perfect as is. But at the end of the day, some of these teams or schools have bigger aspirations. I just don't know that the Mountain West does something more for a team in the MAC than the MAC does for them, right? It's not like they're joining the Big 10 or the Big 12 or something like that. They're at the end of the day, it's all still G5. All right. So moving on to some of the bigger news that started happening yesterday, we saw East Carolina fire head coach Mike Houston. They named defensive coordinator Blake Harrell as the interim head coach. Houston was 27-38 in 5+ seasons, 15-28 in the conference, and 5-14 the past 2 seasons. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that's come as a huge surprise. East Carolina, from my understanding, was a pretty big spender in NIL this offseason. And obviously they're not getting the results on the field. They look better than they did last year, but that's not hard to do. Last year they were god awful. They brought in Caton Hauser, Jake Garcia, a lot of other big time transfers. So they spent a lot of money. I'm assuming they weren't getting the results that they wanted, and head coach Mike Houston is the one to unfortunately have to pay that price. So Hero Sports kind of wrote an article after the firing, and kind of talked about 5 potential candidates. I don't know that any one in particular stands out to me. But
personally, I think this is the audition for Blake Harrell. Typically, especially in college, you normally see the special teams coordinator become the interim because they have kind of worked with everybody and they have time throughout the season because they're focused on special teams, so they can kind of help here and there, so they just know more people. So it kind of makes sense for that special teams coach to become that interim. When you go and you make an OC or a DC your interim, that's when it's like, okay, there's something more strategic going on. Is it this job audition, or maybe it kind of turns into one. You look at I'm blanking on the Donaldson over at Boise State last year. Like, hey, we got to try to keep Danielson. You got to keep some guys here. He wins some games. I don't know if necessarily he was considered for that job like right away, but then it kind of formed into that. So I think that's something to be aware of. Like when we talk about these names, I think first and foremost, I think Blake Harrell. Like this might be his job.
So the candidates that Hero Sports identified was Jacksonville Jaguars running backs coach Jerry Mack. He has experience as a head coach and a coordinator in the region. Before going to the Jaguars, he was Tennessee's running backs coach from 2021 to 2023. He was also previously an associate head coach, offensive coordinator, and quarterbacks coach at Rice. He was a head coach at North Carolina Central, wide receivers coach at South Alabama and Memphis, OC and quarterback coach at Arkansas Pine Bluff, passing game coordinator, wide receiver coach, Central Arkansas, etc. He doesn't really have any ties to East Carolina, so that just kind of, it seems like they always go after guys with ties or other coaches. But he certainly has a resume where maybe he and some some experience in North Carolina area. Next was SMU offensive coordinator Casey Woods. He's currently the offensive coordinator at SMU. Not sure why he would necessarily want to leave, other than to be a head coach. Obviously, with SMU being in the ACC, they can offer him a substantial amount of money, more so than maybe ECU can. But obviously, he's been in the AAC where SMU was at before they joined the ACC. East Tennessee State head coach Trey Lamb. He was previously the head coach at Gardner Webb. Again, a guy that maybe wants to move up. I don't think that ECU will go this route because they just kind of did that with Houston, right? Houston was the head coach at JMU back when JMU was still in the FCS. So I'm not sure that East Carolina is going to be interested in going the FCS route again. Another potential candidate, and this was kind of interesting, Indiana defensive coordinator Bryant Haynes. What's interesting is he came from JMU. He was at JMU too with Kurt Signetti. But his defenses have been really, really good. And I'm sure with the way Indiana is playing this year, he is going to be a hot commodity in coaching searches in the near future. And then UL Monroe head coach Bryant Vincent. This one's interesting too, because I'm just assuming ECU is just going to offer more money than UL Monroe does. They have more money and I would assume certainly more resources. But he has certainly taken. I mean, it would be a great choice because he has taken UL Monroe and turned them around big time. UL Monroe wasn't expected to do anything in the Sun Belt West, and they're looking like the cream of the crop of the Sun Belt West, at least right now. So Bryant Vincent, definitely an interesting candidate potentially for East Carolina.
So shout out to Eric Froton in the chat. Fantasy Points, NBC Sports. He says it was time for Houston to go. Justice, what are your thoughts? Like, I don't know. It's kind of roughly around this time we start seeing those head coaches make a change. But it kind of struck me as odd that ECU would make this change now. Now, I guess think they lost to people, regional teams. I think it was
they beat Old Dominion.
So, but yeah, it's like they've lost to some of those. Like, so maybe you lose.
They lost Liberty, lost App State.
So maybe that's why it is, but I don't know. It just kind of seems weird that it happened at this, because usually, like, it's the big schools that want to get ahead of it, and so they can start kind of plucking their guys that they want.
I think it's more just the history, right? He hasn't done great the whole time there. When he first started, the history was they stunk in the beginning of the year and they turned things on at the end of the year. If you remember the Holt Nailers years when Holt Nailers was the QB,
I mean, that was pretty much the only good year. That was
kind of what they did, right? They would like lose 4 in a row and then they'd win like the last 5 or 6 games, something like that. And so, his tenure there hasn't been great by any stretch of the imagination. Like I said, they went after they were big spenders in the portal this year, and I think those two things combined, like my guess is they basically told him, hey, you buy who you want. This is what you got. This is it. Do or die time. And he didn't do it. And so he got the axe. That would be my guess.
All right. Well, there's another firing
Another
we got to
head
talk
coach.
about.
Another head coach got fired. And this one, like, I think folks knew this one was coming for a long time. He's been on the hot seat since last season. Last year, he fired, I believe, all the coordinators, which saved his job. But, at the end of the day, it didn't save him too much longer. Southern Mississippi fires head coach Will Hall. They name assistant head coach Reed Stranger as the interim head coach. Hall was 14 for 30 over 4 seasons. In the last 2 seasons, he's gone 4-15. Looking for potential candidates, I found a couple articles from Hero Sports and the College Football Network. Some of the Hero Sports candidates were the same as East Carolina, but some different names as well. Brian Ellis, Alabama tight ends coach. Brennan Marion, UNLV offensive coordinator. That one's interesting. Again, I expect him to probably get some bigger calls in terms of maybe an OC for a Power 4 job, but definitely interesting. Now, this next one should be on anybody's list if he's willing to come back, and that's Bill Clark, the former UAB head coach. He cited health reasons why he retired from UAB, but he was the head coach at UAB. UAB shut down football. He became the head coach when they brought it back. So, like a dormant program, and they were super successful under his tenure when they came back. And so, Bill Clark, I think, Southern Miss or East Carolina, they could do a lot worse than Bill Clark if he's interested in coming back. He would certainly be someone on. If I was one of those schools, he would definitely be someone on one of my short lists. Brett Vegan, Montana State head coach, very successful program in the FCS level. So I think that would be a good hire as well. And then this next one really, I think it's really a long shot, but it was mentioned in the College Football Network article, and that was Todd Monken, who is currently the Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator. The only reason I can think he was even mentioned is because Southern Miss is kind of where he started, right? He kind of started his coaching career. If he wants to be or start his head coaching career, I guess I should say, his kind of rise among the coaching ranks came at Southern Miss. Who knows? Maybe he wants to be a head coach at a college football program again. My gut says, that he does not want to be that. He's going to stay at Baltimore Ravens. And they're certainly going to offer him a lot of money. That Ravens offense is humming. They're humming again tonight. They already got 41 points. So that's probably a little bit of a long shot. And then the last one is Dirk Cotter, Boise State offensive coordinator. Certainly has experience as a head coach. He was a head coach at Arizona State. He's been in the NFL as well. I guess I can potentially see that. But there's no Ashton Genty in Southern Miss. So I don't know. Again, Bill Clark to me is, if I was either East Carolina or Southern Miss, he'd definitely be at the top of my list. While we're talking about head coaches, I went and looked up Utah State, who fired their head coach right before the season, just to kind of see maybe some names that were being thrown around there. Obviously, Nate Drilling, the interim Utah State head coach, new to the team. He was hired to be the defensive coordinator. I don't know. I think he's done a good job, right? I mean, kind of thrown in the fire, so to speak. So I certainly think he's a serious candidate to hold on to that job. Some other names that were mentioned, once again, Brennan Marion, UNLV offensive coordinator. DeAnton Lynn, USC defensive coordinator, formerly of UCLA. Great defensive coach. That would be a great one, I think. Jason Eck, Idaho head coach from the FCS. And then Kevin McGivern, the San Jose State wide receivers coach. My gut tells me they're going to stay. They're probably going to stick with Nate Drilling. I think, in my opinion, he's exceeded my expectations for Utah State, given all that turmoil and the things that kind of happened there, just weeks before the season started. So that's kind of who the person I think will probably get that Utah State job.
And when I'm looking at these other names, in the event that Drilling does not get the position, something that we really like for Utah State is this offensive scheme that they've been having. Now, if you go with Marion or McGiven or even maybe Eck to that extent, like what does that do to that offense? And it's been working, and even when you have a defense, as long as you don't change that offensive coordinator or at least those concepts in that system, that'll be something I guess I'm really interested to watch.
Well, speaking of offense, Coastal Carolina fires offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach Travis Trickett. Head coach Tim Beck will assume those duties for the rest of the season. And I don't know, like the last 2 weeks, I guess I would say the wheels have fallen off of Coastal Carolina. Ethan Vasco has looked terrible. 2 weeks ago, Noah Kim came in. He didn't look any better. This past week, Vasco was terrible once again. Noah Kim came in and he looked better. But yeah, this offense has not looked good the last few weeks. Just looked pretty disastrous. Coastal Carolina was a team that seemed to be trending up at the beginning of the year, and now they're kind of doing the opposite. And so Travis Trickett is gone. Getting into some player news. Some players are kind of now coming out and entering or announcing that they're going to enter the transfer portal. UTSA running back Rocco Griffin is one of those guys. Announced that he will be entering the portal. The same with the Louisiana Tech tight end Hunter Tipton. Into some player news in terms of guys playing this week. Injury news is general news. Jay Sorrell, Wyoming head coach, said that both quarterback Evan Svoboda and redshirt freshman Caden Anderson will play at quarterback this week against Utah State. They both played this past week. I didn't watch the game. Looking at the stats, neither of them was super impressive. So stay tuned, I guess, if you're relying on a Wyoming quarterback. James Madison, running back, Ayo Adeyi, is going to redshirt, and he will be back next season. He has another year of eligibility still available, so he will be returning to the Dukes. Max Brown has come back for the Charlotte 49ers. This past week, he led the team in rushing with 67 yards, and hopefully that'll improve things for tight end Colin Weber. Max Brown, Colin Weber had a good connection before the injury. Colin Weber had kind of fallen off in terms of production the last few weeks with all the backup quarterbacks playing. But now with Max Brown back, hopefully that Charlotte passing game, and in particular Colin Weber, will see an uptick in production. Moving over to some injury news, Hawaii wide receiver Pofele Ashlock did not play this past week. We tried to get some information on the reason why. We haven't found a reason why he didn't play. In terms of his availability this week, hopefully we'll find out something in the next day or two once Hawaii starts practicing, and we'll be sure to let everyone know once we hear something. And then UTSA. UTSA has a lot of injury news come out in the last couple of days. Wide receiver Devin McEwen did not play this week. His status in future weeks is still unknown, but he's not expected to be out for the whole season. But wide receiver DeClorian Clark, head coach Jeff Traylor, has said that Clark is going to be out for the season after suffering a torn ACL on his left knee Saturday against Florida Atlantic. DeClorian Clark had been working his way back doing rehab on a severe tear in his right knee since 2022. Made his first catch Saturday and then tore the ACL on his left knee. Just terrible news. You hate to hear that for DeClorian Clark. Just kind of brutal injury history, man. He's already missed, now it'll be 3 seasons now. He's torn ACLs in both knees. Just sending him well wishes and positive thoughts. Sticking with UTSA, wide receiver DJ Allen is also out for the year after tearing his ACL in their Week 7 game. Temple wide receiver Dante Wright is day-to-day and questionable for Saturday's game versus East Carolina. Sam Houston quarterback Hunter Watson left last week with injury. He played the first half, did not come back in the second half. Jace Bauer started the second half. With it being a short week, certainly don't expect to see Hunter Watson again this week. It's very likely going to be Jace Bauer once again for Sam Houston. Speaking of Sam Houston, wide receiver Noah Smith is questionable for FIU. I believe they're hopeful that he's going to be able to play tomorrow night against the Panthers. Jacksonville State running back Anwar Lewis is questionable versus Middle Tennessee this week. And Memphis, Mario Anderson had to carry the load last week. Thank God they had Mario Anderson, but he should get some relief this week as running back Brandon Thomas, kind of the goal line back, is expected to be back available this week for the Memphis Tigers. Nevada quarterback.
I think DeRozier is also going to be back as well.
Yeah, if not this week, probably the week after, I think, right? So
yeah.
getting some depth there for the Tiger running back room. Nevada quarterback Brendan Lewis is questionable for their game versus Hawaii. And Florida International quarterback Keon Jenkins got injured in the game this past week. The backup got injured in the game, but reportedly he is expected to start versus Sam Houston tomorrow night. Central Michigan quarterback Bert Emanuel was carted off with an ankle injury. Joey Labus, their starting quarterback, was already out for the season. They turned to Tyler Jefferson in the absence of Emanuel and Labus. So stay tuned. It didn't look good for Bert Emanuel Jr. Having to be carted off the field. Stay tuned to see his availability. Florida Atlantic.
I did catch in the post game. Their head coach kind of made some comments about a dirty play of the guys at the bottom of piles where, kind of alligator rolling on some people, and they were twisting. So not sure if, I didn't see the play in particular, but I'm sure there's some fire to that smoke. But hopefully it doesn't mean Bert will miss too much, but we'll see what this means for at least week 9.
Florida Atlantic wide receiver Omari Hayes was a surprise inactive, did not play this past week. Reportedly, his availability against South Florida is up in the air, but I think that they have a bye week this week, so hopefully he'll be ready when they play South Florida in 2 weeks. Malik Sherrod once again missed week 8. Not confident that we're going to see him for Fresno State in week 9 versus San Jose State. So that just means more carries for Elijah Gilliam. Jacob Zeno, UAB quarterback, missed his 3rd straight game. They do have a bye week before they play Tulsa. So that's kind of one to pay attention to, see if this 2-week stretch, if Jacob Zeno can get healthy. And finally, Toledo quarterback Tucker Gleason missed week 8. John Allen Richter got the start. They got the win. But it does look like things are trending to the positive direction for him to be out there in week 9 for the Toledo Rockets. All right. We switched the order of things a little bit this week. So wanted to talk a little bit about the AP Top 25. Boise State in a bye week drops 2 spots to number 17, which just seems ridiculous to me. They didn't play, but they dropped 2 spots. They were 15. They are now down to number 17. Army stayed at number 23, and Navy moved up 1 spot to number 24. Others receiving votes, UNLV came in at number 28 with 5 votes, and Liberty number 31 with 1 vote. Yeah, I don't understand the Boise State drop, but they have a big matchup this week against UNLV, and the winner of that, I have no doubt, will be ranked. If it's UNLV, they deserve to be ranked. They got another win. I don't know if you want to consider it a P4 win, but they beat Oregon State. this week. So they've got the most P4 wins, regardless of whether you count that Oregon State win as a P4 win or not. But UNLV definitely looks UNLV to me and Boise State look like the two best teams in the G5. Speaking of the G5, the Hero Sports G5 Top 25 poll. We are voters in this poll through 8 weeks. Boise State number 1, UNLV 2, Army 3, Navy 4, Memphis 5, Tulane 6, Liberty 7, Louisiana 8, Western Kentucky 9, and UL Monroe 10. That is the consensus in the from all the voters in that Hero Sports poll. Probably the biggest differences for us, we have Tulane at number 3. They come in at number 6 in the consensus poll. We're a little bit higher on UL Monroe. I think we have them 8, and we have them in Louisiana swapped. We have UL Monroe 8 and Louisiana 10. Some others that are different than bigger difference than what we have in our what we submitted our votes. We have Miami at number 17 on this consensus poll. They come in at number 23, and then we have Western Michigan at number 22. They are not ranked, or they're not in this top 25 consensus. It's a little bit surprising to me because they're number 1 in the MAC right now. They're the only undefeated MAC team in terms of conference play. So I think they definitely deserve some love.
And they'll probably go up a spot or two this next week as Western Michigan takes on Kent State. And Kent State is one of the few winless teams left here. We've got UTEP gets their first win, beating Florida International 30-21, leaving Kennesaw State, who has Liberty on Wednesday, and then the aforementioned Kent State Golden Flashes, who have Western Michigan as those only winless teams there in the G5. So Western Michigan we have in there. I would assume the consensus might have Western Michigan in there next week after, I presume, a win there. And I believe it's at Western Michigan at Waldo Stadium there. Undefeated teams through 8 weeks. We have Army Black Knights. It's going to be a tough one because their opponent has never lost ever. It's a bye week, so I don't know. That'll be a tough one. But yeah, Army Black Knights, Navy Midshipmen. They have number 12 Notre Dame, so that will be a tough one. And then the Liberty Flames have Kennesaw State. So we've got the undefeated versus the winless team there. So I'm interested to see how the Navy game goes. It's just hard to prepare for a triple option team. We've seen Notre Dame get knocked off by NIU earlier this year. I think Navy can do it. G5 bowl count. Currently, there are 5 G5 teams that are eligible for bowls, and that is Army Black Knights, Navy Midshipmen, Memphis Tigers, UNLV Rebels, and the Louisiana Raging Cajuns.
Hey Eric, good to see you, man. In the comments, thanks for watching. Thanks for the support. Eric's Eric's one of the leaders over at the College Huddle. We are a part of the College Huddle, one of the largest network of community-based or school podcasts. And I don't know. I don't know what the count is now. My guess is like 75, maybe even 80 of school-focused podcasts. They cover both football and college basketball. So if you're interested in some other schools, visit the College Huddle. They probably have your favorite schools podcast available in their network.
All right, come back and join us next week as we discuss what happened in Week 9, as well as look forward to Week 10 of the 2024 season. And as always, bring you up to date on all the latest news and happenings in the world of G5 college football. you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're watching us on X, please give us a retweet, a like, and a follow. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please subscribe and leave those 5-star ratings and reviews. Remember, we've got our new merch line out there. If you want to support us, go ahead and make a purchase there. Justice dropped the link here in the chat.
The link is in the YouTube comments, and it's on it's pinned on our X page.
All right. And with that, we thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.